Hello, the Logik community. Here we are. It's Sunday. It is a new year. Welcome everyone to the first Logik episode of 2023. The chat has already gone wild and I've missed so much of it. Hello, Maury. Hello, Randy. Randy is making all this happen behind the scenes. Brooks, Maury, again, Miriam, Charles Quinn, Richard Betts, Peter Kim, Josh Lawrence, Carlos Campos, BJH, Andy Milkus. I thought Andy Milkus was flying. Oh, he's at the airport. Nick Smith, Seville. Look at all these people. Michael Landon, Austin Campbell. I know that guy. David Kreitz, Rex Carter, Virgil Castro, FlyFX.net, Philippe. Wow, look at all these wonderful names. There's a lot of people here. This is great. We have a really great episode. Grazi's amazing. Yeah. What a way to start the new year with a fantastic show. I think I might have mentioned that we have new music coming, but that will be coming at a later date, an undisclosed date. Andy's saving the awesome music for his show. Alan Letary in the house. Hey, I saw you at a meetup picture. Ooh, the music has changed. That means I gotta get ready. I didn't talk about my vertical window today, but here it is. Thanks everyone for coming. Oh, I gotta transition, don't I? I did it. Hello. Welcome. Happy Sunday. Thanks for being here. There's a lot of names. It's great to see all your names. We have a wonderful show today. And for now, why don't we get started by talking about some of messages from our sponsors and some announcements from the Logik community. So here we go. This episode of Logik Live is brought to you by AJA, together with Flame since 2006. Hot Spring is the newest sponsor of Logik Live, and they are the future of VFX outsourcing, connecting you to other artists from around the world to help you get your projects done. You can find them at thehotspring.com. If you need Boris FX plugins and you didn't just snag their Black Friday deal at Black Friday, which is very old and I shouldn't have mentioned that, you can save 15% on any Boris FX product, standalone or subscription, with the Logik-2022 code at checkout. Not bad at all. The Logik merch store is alive and well, and who wouldn't want to look their best while they make their best on Flame? Because we do make the best, don't we? You can find the merch store on the Logik.tv website after you click the merch button at the top of the page. Thank you to all of the patrons who are subscribed on Patreon. Your support is what allows this right here to take place and what allows the Logik community to thrive and grow. And look at that list. I just added the latest 3 to that list. It just keeps growing. It really does keep growing. Up to 148 patrons as of this week. Thank you to each and every one of you. If you'd like to support what we're doing here on Logik, you can get yourself some exclusive content, such as the post-show Q&A, where, for instance, after this show, we'll be heading on over to Zoom to chat with Grazi, who was nice enough to offer us even more of her afternoon, to hanging out with the Flame community here and chatting about all things Matchbox today. Head on over to patreon.com/LogikTV and support for as little as $5 a month. The Logik Forum is where we in the Logik community go to ask questions, answer questions, or just to talk about all things Flame. And every week it is growing. It is a new year. Since we just got started this year, let's do a little recap of the final forum stats for 2022. We ended up at 1,238 users, 1.9 million page views, 14.1 thousand posts, and a whopping 583 users on Discord. That is some great stats for 2022. And of course, speaking of Discord, if you haven't already signed up, why don't you join me on over at Discord? The community over there is thriving as ever. Every day there's more people chatting. This past week I had a Python adventure and the community really came through and helped me write my first Python script. Big shout out to Stefan over on Discord who helped me out a whole lot with that one. Thank you. Discord is great for one-off questions, conversations, and hangouts. Click the Discord link at theforum.logik.tv and come on over. The challenge coins have shipped, and I'm pretty sure I saw somewhere that we're getting even more on the way for potential. Some of us are getting more, which is cool. They are super cool. They are quite large, and they showcase the program that you know and love as well as the community that you know and love. Speaking of community, we are just a few days past the long-awaited very first in-person event for Logik.tv out in LA. And while I'm sad to say I wasn't able to attend, I heard that it was absolutely fantastic. I have a few pictures here from the event that shows the excellent turnout and some beautiful faces of the Flame community with some amazing presentations. Here's a presentation from none other than friend Warren, who we saw last time on Logik. And here is a wonderful group photo with, I think, some people who are here in the chat. I see Alan Letary right up front and center. Good times, and a good sign of the times that we're back to having these events once in a while in person. These shows are great, but so are in-person events. And that event wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for some of our sponsors. So big shout out and thank you to the event's sponsors, who are Autodesk, AWS, Streambox, Simple Cloud, and Boris FX. And a shout out to the host, Illuminate Stages, and a final shout out to the team at Synesys for putting it all together. A big thank you to everyone. And while we're saying thank you, a big thank you to Glenn Teal. If you haven't heard, flame artist Glenn Teal has been helping us out at Logik by taking the initiative to produce the Logik podcasts. He's been doing an amazing job getting these underway. We're releasing new episodes all the time, starting with, just a few days ago, legendary flame artist Inti Martinez, talking about how he got started and a bit about his journey in all things flame. If anyone has any suggestions for podcast topics or interview subjects, shoot a message over to Glenn on the forum. I think I have his username here up on the screen, Glenn Teal, one word. Always great to get more fresh new content on the podcast. Speaking of content, this is our time to talk about Logik Academy. We had some new classes to close out the year back in 2022, starting off with Flame's Particle System, Part 1 by Sinan Viral. Sinan, of course, as you've heard me say before, does an amazing job explaining a lot of specific particle use cases and breaks it down in a way that us average non-particle experts can totally understand. Randy McEntee walks us through your first Linux Flame, how to take on the task of getting Flame up and running on a Linux workstation, which is not easy. This helps you through the process and gets you through the setup and installation, even though it's complicated, and he makes it not so complicated. And if that isn't enough, Randy walks us through how to set up and use the Logik portal, which is quite the essential tool for any Flame artist who enjoys taking advantage of what the community has to offer for free in a wonderful interface inside of Flame, created by Michael Vaglienti. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful tool, and Randy shows us how to use it. These three join the rest of the series: Connect to Conform, Image Node, Intro to NDI, 8-Minute Aces, Beauty Techniques in Flame, Setting Up PyBox, and the Machine Learning Time Warp, all available for free on the Logik YouTube channel. And I heard through a little birdie that we're getting even more Logik Academy videos sometime soon. That is very exciting. Big shout out and thank you to Autodesk for sponsoring these videos. And of course, as we just covered last Logik Live, Flame 2023.3 became available for download just last month, so don't forget to upgrade if your schedule and pipeline allows, because as we learned last Logik, there are some solid new features with the animation editor and some sweet new BFX bug fixes, so upgrade if you can. But I think that does it. Oops, I forgot to show that. I think that does it for our slideshow here. So let me transition back to me. Hello. Thank you all for being here. This is wonderful. As you can see from the title of this show, we are here to talk about all things Matchbox Shaders. And if you are a Flame artist, surely you've heard of Matchbox Shaders. Some of my favorites are LS Wireless. There's, of course, Croc Median. There's Croc Beer. There's Dollface. There's a lot of Matchbox Shaders out there. But while you may be familiar with them, what you may not be familiar with is just how they get created, the process for creating them. And that is what my guest is here to say today. Grazie is here to talk to us about all things Matchbox Shaders, how she has discovered how to write them, and hopefully at the end of this video, you'll be able to at least have an understanding of what goes into writing one yourself. So hello to Grazie, welcome to Logik, and thank you so much for being here.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very nice of you to give us some time, especially on a subject that I think a lot of us, me most of all, know so very little about. As I mentioned, we use them, but it's hard to say we know exactly just how they work. So before we jump into that, I would love to know and to allow the viewers to know maybe just a little bit about you, how you got started on Flame, maybe how long you've been using Flame, just a little bit about you, just to get us going.
Yeah, definitely. So I started on Flame about 8 years ago. I went to school to Full Sail and I graduated in computer animation in a computer animation degree. So in school, I kind of had an understanding of what compositing was. I learned actually Nuke, and my first job was given in the Flame world. So that was my beginning in then. And I guess I got started with the Matchbox creation because before ever getting into Flame, I actually had a bit of a scripting background. So I always wanted to see ways on how I could use that knowledge inside of Flame. And through my investigation, I stumbled upon Matchboxes. And ever since then, I've done a little bit of research and I've created a couple. Yeah, through the years.
That's great. And as I think I hinted at it during our introduction, there's like Python, which is kind of a new development. I think that
Yeah,
kind of came about in 2018, 2019. It wasn't
yeah,
really an API that we could use, but Matchbox has been around for much longer than that. So I guess
right.
there's really two scripting pathways.
Definitely.
Andy has gone down, as we've heard many times before, the Python world, but it's exciting to hear, and I think it's less common to hear someone who goes down the Matchbox pathway.
Definitely. And I think it's mainly because that's what's been there the longest. So that's, kind of like what I've researched the longest. I am highly curious about the Python path. So I haven't really navigated that yet, but I would love to. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's great. It's cool stuff. So great. Why don't we get started with? I think Grazi has a wonderful presentation, like a quick presentation to get us get our little bit into the Matchbox world, and then she's actually going to take us through and write live in front of a live audience with all the implications of it being live, of a real Python script that she's going to show us here in Flame. So great. If
Yeah.
I'll switch on over to your screen share and you can load that. There we go.
Wonderful.
Great.
Yeah. So can you guys see my screen?
I think we can. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, as you kind of mentioned before, the flame artist community is very much familiar with the Matchbox shaders, but it might be not everybody might know what goes behind it and how to create one. So that's kind of what I want to go over a little bit in this presentation. So starting with what a Matchbox shader is, it's basically just a tool in Flame that allows you to load a shader. What a shader is basically a set of instructions in a script, which in this case is scripted in the GLSL scripting language, which is it's a language that's similar to C or C plus. So if you have any experience with that, then it's going to look very similar to that. And the type of shader that a Matchbox allows us to load is a pixel or fragment shader. And this is important to note because there are different types of shaders. We have vertex shaders that work kind of differently. So the ones that we use are the pixel or fragment shaders. And something that I think it's important to mention as well is how the pixel or fragment shader looks at the data that you have in an input, because the matchbook is going to take an input and transform it into an output. And the way that it does that is that it looks at the location of the pixel and the color that it contains. So every pixel or fragment of an image is located within a canvas. And it has a location in X and a location in Y. And it takes it from that location in the input and places it in the output with whatever it is that we do inside of the Matchbox. So we're going to see this type of things a lot. And also, the coordinates of each pixel are kind of shown in a vector of two components. So the vector, we're going to see vectors a lot also when we script. So that's something that we have to kind of get used to. This is another example of another pixel that it's located in X. In X, it's in the location 6, and in Y, it's in the location of 1. There's something else that we need to also kind of get familiar with. And if you have any experience with scripting, you're going to have seen this probably before, and it's the different types of variables. Some of the most common that we're going to see in the GLSL world when we're scripting matchboxes are the Boolean types, which are values that are either true or false. We also have the integer values, which are whole numbers, and the float ones, which have a fractional component. So in this case, we're going to see, for example, a 1.5, 1.6. That's what it means for it to have some fractional component. And then again, we have the vectors, which I think are highly important to understand. So we kind of mentioned in this slide how a vec2 is going to have the coordinate of a of certain pixel in a canvas. But a vec3, for example, is going to contain the RGB values of an image, which I'm sure that we're highly familiar with. So that's very important to note. And a vec4, we're also going to see in places like when we include the alpha on a certain value. So we can have an RGBA. That A component is the alpha channel. And we also have a sampler 2D that we're going to see a lot in the Matchbox creation. And that basically what it does is that it samples a texture, a 2D texture, and we see it when we want to sample the input of our shader to use it and do something with it before we output it. And then this is kind of what we were talking about with the RGB values having 3 values. And here we kind of have some examples of different pixels being located in different parts of an image, basically the coordinates and what the RGB values are of each one of them. And here is another way to demonstrate that also. So the red, typically we're going to see the red, the true red in a script is going to be represented as 1, 0, 0, because the first component of a vector is the red channel, green and blue. So the green is going to have 1 on green and 0 on the other two. And then the blue is only going to have it on the blue channel. And as we probably all know, the color true black is going to be 0, 0, 0 on the 3 channels, and the color white is going to be 1, 1, 1. So getting into the fun stuff, what the Matchbox Shaders is made up of 3 files. So this is important to note. So the GLSL file is what's going to have the information of the fragment shader. It has the code, so basically there's where the magic happens. That there is where we're gonna tell the script what to do with the input that we give it. And then we have the XML file. And the XML file is what controls the user interface. So that's basically what you're gonna see in the flame side, the window, when you bring up your Matchbox. And then we also have a PNG file, which is that little picture that you see when you're scrolling through the server to find the Matchbox shader that you want to use. And something important to note also is that we have different type of variables, and the uniform variables are key in scripting of shaders because those are the ones that are read-only, first of all, and you can create some that are the ones that the user is going to be able to adjust. So anything that you see that's adjustable for the user in a Matchbox shader is going to be a uniform variable. And then just to kind of show a basic way of scripting a GLSL file, this is kind of how it's going to look like. So at the beginning, without getting too deep into what's going on in there, because this can look like a lot of letters, but what's happening at the beginning, it's the declaration of the uniform variables. So again, these are the type of variables that the user is going to have some sort of control over. And some of them are read-only, like for example, all the Autodesk, the Autodesk ones that Flame offers. You're gonna notice that they start with the letters ADSK from Autodesk, and those we don't really have control over, but things like lift and gain we do. And then you're always gonna see a main function starting, and then everything that happens in it, it's what the code is doing. So the very first thing that you see, and this is something that I notice happens a lot. It happens all the time in GLSL scripts, which is that the pixels, the coordinate pixels of the whole canvas of your input gets normalized. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that and try to explain that a little bit because that can be confusing later on when we get into scripting. But that's like one step of the GLSL script. And then at the end, we see the GLFrag color, which is basically the color that's assigned to the pixel in the output. So this is just basically to show a standard GLSL script. And then we have the XML file, which is what what's going to basically code the user interface. So it's going to look something like this, and it kind of looks like, the language used to script, I guess, websites. It's very similar. So you have like openings and closings. You're going to see it kind of like the shader node preset starts here and ends here. There's a shader that starts here and it ends right here. And we have some control over the uniforms. This, again, is going to make a little bit more sense, I think, when we get into scripting, which is actually the fun part. And we can start doing that right now. Hopefully this all makes sense. And yeah, if you have any question, though, so far, please feel free to jump in.
I was just about to say, it's a wonderful explanation, but for people who aren't so familiar with scripting, it might be a lot. But I think the idea is to just buckle up and just take a look at the next part here, which is she had to get us the primer so that things make sense. But now that we've kind of like gotten the taste of the primer, we're going to get into the thick of it, which is actually writing it. But as she just said, if you have any questions, write in the chat, and I'll see if I can find a good time to ask them while she's presenting. But otherwise, let's get into the scripting part.
Yeah, definitely. And so there's something that I kind of want to go back and talk about because this is going to be key in what we're doing, especially now that we're going to start scripting. And it's a utility that Autodesk has available for us, and it is called the Shader Builder. And this, you're going to see, is key in writing in a GLSL shader. Because it's for whatever you write in the shader, it's going to output for you an XML, a very basic XML UI that you can copy and paste and start altering depending on what you wanted to do on the Flame side. What it also has, it's a lot of information on how to build a shader in general. So the way that we have access to it is through the terminal. And it's important to know where it is located in the server. So I have a little sheet here because I already wrote the path. And if I copy that path where that shader builder is, I can paste it on here and write H for help. And it writes to me a lot of information about how I can even get started on writing my very basic GLSL scripting. So yeah, a lot of information here. I'll try to make this a little bigger. But it goes through a lot of things that we kind of went through in my presentation, like, for example, the type of uniforms that you can have in your script, which we have float, vec2, vec3, etc. And yeah, a lot of useful stuff. So I definitely encourage anybody that wants to get into this to open this and have a little bit of a read. There's also a lot of explanation on the Autodesk help Flame website that you can kind of see a lot more about what you can do with that. Also here, I kind of brought in the shader builder just now with the H that help, which displays this full documentation, but there's other things that I can do with it. We're gonna most commonly now, we're gonna be using the M, which is what lets us know if there's something wrong with our Matchbox shader. So we're gonna see that in action later on. So Hopefully, so far, it's making a little bit of sense. I understand this is a lot of information all at once, but I'm trying to make the best use out of the time that we have together here.
Yeah, it's been great so far. And I'll just chime in. I think no one has any questions just yet, but I know that this was several years ago when I had just been starting on Flame. I had
Yeah.
this notion that a Matchbox shader was really just, I think in Flame there's something called a group where you can like group nodes together. I
Right.
originally thought that that's what a Matchbox shader was. It was like someone had grouped a bunch of nodes together and that you had
Mhm.
like an input and an output and it was just packaged inside of something called a Matchbox shader. But the more that I learned about it, and then of course
Right.
after this explanation, what we're about to see, it's nothing like that at all. You're essentially turning nodes into text, or at least text is getting turned
Definitely.
into nodes, and it's nothing to do with nodes that we have access to in the interface. It's all, like, as we'll
Right.
see, just text stuff. So it's very different than what I thought.
Yeah, it is very different, but I do like it's funny you mentioned that because I also feel like what when you build a setup in Flame and it is kind of like a script. It's just set up visually.
Hmm.
So a lot of the things that we do can be translated into a Matchbox shader. It's just you have to do it in written form. But a lot of this is if you have an understanding of how to get there in Flame, you can kind of translate that into script. And it's not that intimidating as it might seem. So hopefully this presentation kind of gets you excited about learning how to do that. But that's basically what I think of it. If you understand how it's working on Flame, then you can basically translate it into script. So, for today, I was thinking that it could be cool to attempt to script a shader that would convert an image into like a tune, like a cartoon type of thing. So, I'm gonna call this a tune shader, and these are kind of like my inspirations. I want to have an input that I can transform into looking into something like this. And the way that I would go about it is that I would like to kind of clamp my shadows, my midtones, and my highlights separately so that I can make them all become one flat color and then make it look a little bit more cartoony. In this case, on the right, I see that there's like this really cool blue that represents shadows, and we have this like lighter blue that represents the midtones, and then we have this for the highlights. And the same thing for this, but in a kind of like orange color setting. And here we have a little teacup, super fancy. And I would like to convert this teacup into something that looks something like that. So, just out of analyzing it, I can see that we have some sort of values for what I would like to be considered my shadows, some for the midtones over here, and some for the highlights. And they go from darker to lighter. So that's perfect for what I want to do. So here I brought in a color gradient just to represent that. Because basically, what I'm trying to do with that script again is to just have one value for like just different ranges of a color. And working on a black and white one could make it just simpler because black and white have all the gray tones in between have the same values in red, green, and blue. So I can already know that the lightest color on the left is 111 in red, green, and blue, and then the one all over the right is 000. So I'm gonna try to actually represent that visually. So we're going from 1 to 0. So hopefully that makes sense. And in between that, I have zero point 0.5. And somewhere in between here, we have 0.25. And in between here, we have 0.75 or so. If that makes sense. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Great. And I would like to have a range of values that represent my highlights that go somewhere from here to here per se, and some that have my midtones values that go somewhere from here to here. and some that represent my shadows that go from here to here. And I would say that whatever values these are then need to be, so I'm going to call them, I don't know, lum for luminosity. It has to be then higher than, maybe I'm going to go like all the way to here, to like 0.4. And then over here, my luminosity has to be higher than 0.75. And then this is just the rest. So it has to be higher than 0. So hopefully that makes sense so far. That's kind of like how I want to divide it. So anything that goes in this range, I want it to become all white, like a flat white. Everything that's in the middle, I want it to become a mid-tone gray. And everything that's on this range, I want it to become just full black. And that way I can kind of start building something that looks like the Matchbox info that I have for my toon shader. So first thing that we need to do is to create a GLSL script. And we're gonna do that now. So I open just a simple text editor. It's gonna do. I like this one right here, COT editor, because you can change in between different scripting language that can help you. Unfortunately, GLSL is not here, but I'm gonna just type C because it's kind of similar. And I'm gonna start building my shader. So I'm gonna save this on the server under a folder that I called Graziella Shaders. And I'm gonna call this test. And it's a GLSL file. And I'm just gonna save it. It's empty, there's nothing there yet, but I kind of want to test to see if Flame sees it. Graziella Shaders is over here. So I see test here. That's not gonna do nothing because it's empty. There's nothing in it, but I can at least already see it in Flame. So the very first step that we do when we start a Matchbox shader is that we want to normalize it. And that can be a little bit confusing, that part. So I'm going to try to explain it right here. But you're going to see that in most of the Matchbox shaders. So what we want to do basically is for whatever image that we're working with to begin with. So I'm going to assume that it is a 1920 by 1080 image. We want to transform that into a 1x1 working space because we are interested in working in a normalized space to adjust things in my GLSL. So to do that, we have to do some simple math, but it is a bit of a confusing part of the script. So we're gonna see what we have to do. So 1920 would be my width, correct? And then 1080 would be my height. So what we have to do to transform this into a 1x1 working space, a normalized space, is to take the pixel location, basically. We want to adjust the coordinates of each pixel into this new workspace. So whatever that lives here, I want to find its new location in a 1x1 place. And the way to do that is to take the pixel location in this case, we're talking about the X location, divided by the width of my canvas. And that's going to give me the new location in X, and the same thing for the Y. So if we have a pixel location in Y, I have to divide it by the height. Sorry, this was 1920, sorry. And then 1080. And that's going to give me a new height for the new location. Hopefully that makes some sort of sense. And this is the new location in X, and this will give me a new location in Y. And please feel free to ask questions. This part is a bit confusing, I know.
No, it makes sense, and you're doing a good job explaining it. And what I want to point out is that this is so different from your average flame artist's task. But I think there's
Right.
something nice about using a part of your brain that you don't often use. Because we're doing stuff that's so different, but it's kind of like a good exercise once in a while to do things like this, to stretch yourself in ways. Hopefully, you're at least someone, whoever wants to try this, is okay at math, because it sounds like math is an integral part of all this.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And this is just part of the script that seems to be repeated over and over. So if it's a bit overly complicated, just know that you can just copy and paste that part of the script and then adjust your image as you want. But just because it appears over and over, I just kind of want to take a little bit of time to explain it a little. So I guess that after we have that new location in X and a new location in Y, we just have to tell the machine to just grab all the informations of the pixel and place it in its new coordinate, which is going to be in a 1 by 1 place. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about the conversion back into the resolution that we wanted to output. That'll be done for us, but we do need to manually do this transformation from the 1920 1080 or whatever resolution you're starting with into a 1 by 1 space, which reminds me a little bit of the UVs. If anyone has any experience of working with UVs, they work in a 1 by 1 space, and then that's how you add texture to any CG object.
Grazie, did you read the chat there?
Oh
Because
no, I
someone just
haven't.
said that exact thing. It's crazy.
Oh
It's
no way!
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Bob
That's
Maple
that.
just wrote the same thing that you just said.
Perfect. Yeah, that's basically what we have to do. And the reason why we do that is because we're working with texture. So it's the same thing, like the same concept as a UV, definitely.
Wow, that's great.
Um, so the way that we would translate this into flame, and actually let me move this to the side a little bit so that we can have the two things on the screen right now. So we need access to the width and the height of what the input is. And if we go back actually to what we pulled up on the terminal here, this little helpful documentation that the shader builder has for us, you are gonna find that you have some information for that. So let me see if I can quickly find it. And it's on here. It's the Autodesk uniform values. I'm not seeing the one that we need right now, but I know it. So we're just gonna start with it. So let me pull that up again. So it is called the Autodesk result width. That's what's gonna have for me the width of the image that we have in the input, and then we have another one that's an uniform Autodesk result. That's we have to begin with. And that's going to give me this information right here that we used in this division. So we have, in this case, assuming that we're starting with a 1920 1080, that's what it's going to give us. And we create as a uniform value because it's a read only. I cannot change that later. Whatever resolution my image has on my input, it's what I get.
Is
If
this
that
almost
makes
like
sense.
defining variables?
Exactly. So you're gonna see me defining a very specific type of variables, which are the uniform variables, and those are the ones that are read only, or the ones that the user later on is gonna have control over.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
And because the GLSL language, you have to always specify what type of variable you're doing. I need to clarify to the software that this is a float. It's a number. So we have a uniform that tells me that's a float, that tells me the width, and another one that tells me the height. And the last thing that I need to make this math is also a uniform that is a sampler 2D, and that's going to contain my input 1 information. And then starting from there, I can open up my first function. So that's going to be my main void. And if you've ever seen anything like that, this type of function, what void means is that this function is not going to give me any result, but I'm going to start my script right there. So I'm going to try to do this this kind of like math that happens up in here. So because this has an x and a y component, I can locate them in a vec2, if that makes sense. So I can do that math all together in a vector. So I'll do that. So this is going to be a vec2 that I'm going to call normalize coordinates. And that's going to be the result of a GL frag chord. So the GLSL language already know what this stands for, the GL frag chord. And I think that it knows, it has a lot of pre-built variables that start with GL. So, so that's going to give me basically the pixel location in X and Y. It already knows what it is, which is kind of what we have in this part of the function right here. So we have point X and Y, and we can divide that by the result, the Autodesk result width and height, which is what we did right here. So that's going to be containing a vec2, Autodesk result width, and Autodesk result height. And hopefully that's making sense so far. I basically just took what we were calculating right here and translated into script. That's what we're doing. And then I want to, as I said, given that new coordinate that we have for each pixel, I want my script to grab it and place all that information in the new coordinate. And the way to do that is to create a vec4. Vec4 is because it's going to have an alpha information. It's going to have an RGB value for each of the pixels or fragments in my new location with an alpha channel, which in this case by default is 1. So it's just white. So to create that, I'm going to create a vec4 that's called color image. And that's going to have a texture 2D. And in there, I'm going to have the input 1, which is the sampler, what we sampled at the beginning, and the new coordination, like the new coordinates of each of the pixels. So that's the norm coordinate. And that's the little piece of math that you're going to see always in the GLSL files that you have available so far. And hopefully that made a little bit more sense. And then at the end, you're always going to see a GL frag color, which is what contains what we're going to see in the output. So just for the sake of it, and just to try this out and see if I did everything correctly, I'm just going to place the color image that I have in here. And if everything works fine, all I should see so far is an output that looks exactly like the input, which looks like a lot of math for something that still doesn't do anything, but I can just test it that way. Color image. Cool. So by saving this, I am gonna go back to my terminal and actually use my handy shader builder to see if everything is kind of like spelled correctly. So And one of the things also I forgot to note that I need to do to test it is that I need to make sure that in my terminal I am in the right folder where I created this GLSL file. So hopefully you have some experience navigating through the terminal. And
It sounds like you do. So we're in good hands.
I have some. So here I have another sheet here because I already took my I already know where that's located, which is in the presets Matchbox Shaders, Grassy Shaders. So I'm just gonna navigate on my terminal to make sure that's where I am. The way to do that is to go to CD and write that. So currently, if I type ls, I'll try to make this bigger so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. So now that I am in that folder, if I click ls and then enter, I'm going to see everything that lives in that folder. And I see that my little test GLSL file is there. So this is basically another way also to visualize what I see on the Finder. So if I were to open that folder, I would see all of that in there. And then what I need to do is to copy the path of my shader builder, which is right there, and then hit M, and then I'm gonna test my GLSF file. So I just write the name of it. And when I click enter, that lets me know if everything compiles correctly, which I'm surprised that I didn't misspell anything. That's unheard of. And if
Your
everything
experience is showing.
Oh my god, if everything looks actually just for the sake of it, I'm gonna try to like just make a mistake here because it's good to use. I misspelled input. It should be input one and I took out the one. So it should if I run that, it should, yeah, gives me a mistake. So it's gonna tell me you have an error on the line 8 input. It's, you have a syntax error. So you will go back here and be like, okay, something in the line 8 is not working fine. And then I could kind of see, oh, okay, the input one, it's not spelled correctly. So as I say that, again, I fix it. And as you can see here, it gives me a XML file, a basic XML file that I can use with this script. So I'm gonna copy that. And here in a new tab, I'm gonna paste it. And I'm gonna change the scripting language to XML. And I'm gonna save it with the same name as this GLSL file has, but with an XML extension. So in test XML. So right now we have both the XML and the GLSL script that are gonna make up my script. My computer is not liking that for some reason. And yeah, well, let me know if you have any questions so far, if this is making any sort of sense.
It's great so far. We have a very specific question from TPO comp, but I guess if we have time, if your XML is a little bit frozen, but maybe you can save it for later because it's pretty specific.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll quit it and then try to restart it. Let me see. Okay, it opened back again my GLSL, and then I'm gonna do a new tab again, and this is gonna be my XML. And I'll save it on the same folder where this exists, and I'll save it under the same name, test.xml. Let's replace it. Okay, great. It worked. So if everything's looking good so far, all I should be able to see from that is a Matchbox that gives me an output that looks exactly like my input. So we're gonna test that right now. Here I see the test one, And this is my input, and this is my output. So they look about the same. So that means that we did it so far properly. And then quickly, I'm going to try to build what we were talking about in here. I want to tell my script to kind of block my different ranges of the image into different colors. Or yeah, for it to go from white to gray to black, so that my result can hopefully look something like this, black and white. So we're gonna attempt to do that. I'm gonna leave actually this here just so that we can know that we're trying to translate this, but on the script side of it. So if we go back to the GLSL, I want to tell it with an if statement, because the if statement is gonna let me kind of block my image in different sections. So what we were saying this is that if the luminosity is higher than 0.4, then please make everything white. So I'm gonna try to script that right now. And I'm actually gonna create a variable that's gonna be a float, and I'm gonna call it lum so that it kind of remains the same. And what I'm gonna store in there is actually the color image in the channel red. So basically that has, as we know, every color in the color image is, it's built out of a red, green, and a blue channel in an alpha. But because the teapot that I'm working with is black and white, I know the red, the green, and the blue are all the same. So really I could choose whichever I wanted to calculate the luminosity. And I'm gonna just go for the red. And then with an if statement, I'm gonna say that if luminosity, as we have here, is actually higher than 0.4, then I want my GL frag color, which is the result that I see on screen, to become fully white. And white is a vec4 by 1, 1, 1, and this is my alpha, 1. And then for the rest, and to say that, I have to do else. For the rest, just please keep it the same. So this is going to be my new code that I want to test. So if everything works correctly, then it should take every color that it's higher than 0.4 and make it all fully white. So we're going to test that right now. I'm going to save it. And because I didn't add any new uniform value to do this, I shouldn't really have to update my script. So all I have to do right now is test it. So we'll see if it does that. And actually, I can test it here. So, test. It's not working. So I'm gonna see and call back my shader builder to see if I spelled something incorrectly or what's going on. Let's see. It says that I have an error on line 13, too many argument to construct of vec4. So let me see what that could refer to. Line 13. Okay, we have a vec4, GL for our color, vec4, 1, 2, 3, gotcha. I wrote a comma here when it should have been a dot, so that's my bad. So I'll save it and see if that compiles correctly, and it looks like it does because it gives us an XML. And let's test it. So I kind of did that. I think that my highlights go way too high. So I'm gonna make it go all the way to here. That actually should have been maybe like dot 0.5. So let me update that on my script. And I'm gonna say just make it higher than 2.5, not as high as 2.4, 2.25. I'll save. So if I bring it back, that didn't update. Hold on. File, save. Hold on. Let me do 0.1 and see what that does.
The live show is being revealed.
Oh yeah, I know. It happens. It's okay. There's a lot of back and forth.
I think the chat is also chiming in and saying that it might be that it's flipped. That if you want it to be the other way around, then maybe it should be 0.7 or something, or 0.66.
Oh, yes. I'm going close to black. That's why. The higher it is, it's going to go to 1. Thank you.
It should be a higher process.
Thank you. It should be a higher number. My brain went, see, this is what this should be. Just like work together. That's
this is part of the coding and the GLSL process.
Yes. You're totally right.
There it is.
The higher I go, the closer I go to 1. So you're totally right. So what I wrote in here, you're right. It's flipped. Cool. And then if I test that on, thank you. Who was the one helping me? Thank you.
It was a couple people.
Gotcha.
They're taking care of us.
Thank you, guys. There you go. So what I have as my highlights in my little script, it's taking what I wanted to consider as highlights here. So I'll quickly do the same for midtones and shadows, so we can do a little tune shader that looks kind of cool. We'll see. So to do that, then I'm gonna do an else if for new range, I guess, of color that could go from 0.75 and maybe to, I would say, 0.3. Let's see what that does. And then in that range, I want my GL tag color to become fully gray. So I'm going to make a vec4 of 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, and then 1. And then for the rest, because the rest of that, this is gonna contain my midtones, and then for the rest of it, I want it to just become black. So anything that does not fall into this range or this range, I want it to become just fully black. So I'm gonna make that a vec 4 of 0.0, 0.0, 0.0, 1. And just to be sure, I'm going to run this through the shader builder and see if I made any mistakes. Okay, it seems like whatever I wrote makes sense. And yeah, let's bring it on to see what that did. Okay, it's kind of doing it. I think that I would like to make my darkness go a bit more, to see it a little bit more. So what I'm gonna do to achieve that is I'm gonna make this number higher. So I'm gonna make it maybe 0.6 and see what that does. Mhm. Okay, that is kind of making a bit of a toon shader, and I think this is kind of what we have time to fine tune for it. But I just wanted to quickly show you guys. I spent some time on another one that I did, where you can actually control the colors that things fall into. So following the same logic, I created uniform values that allow you to control the color um, of each of the segments that you have here. And you can transform in that way some images that look maybe like this into something like this to make it look like a cartoon.
That's great, and it's amazing what you can do when you don't have the pressure of 50 people watching you write a code live. But maybe if you don't mind, could you open up the text document GLSL file that creates this shader? Maybe we can just
Yeah,
take a look.
definitely. So if anything, I can also have it side by side so you can see the difference because they're built almost the same. I just created a couple more um, yeah, a couple more uniforms that allow me to have a bit more control. So let me see if I can actually do this. Open recent, and that's, let's see, shader here.
And it's amazing how simple the code is for something that's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So you'll see it follows the same order of things. It's just for all of this value. So this 0.75, I made it uniform float, which is going to give the user the ability to control it. So if I actually open that here, oh, actually it's right there, you can see that I have those midtones and highlights available for me so that I can control the range. I'm not limiting it to a number because that's what I was kind of doing before, if that makes sense. I was just limiting it to a number that's specific to what I wrote in here. Where here, I created a uniform value, and then that gives the user the ability to change it to whatever they want. And then
Yeah,
the same
that's
in
great.
here. I created here a vec4 that would always have been white, but now I can make it a color that the user has the ability to change.
That's great, and that's some great control and some really cool flexibility.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously the XML file is going to be a little bit more complex. If you want to see that side by side, I can show you too. Um,
Mark Wellington says it's not that much more code for a lot more control, and he's absolutely right.
Definitely. Yeah. And when I started scripting matchboxes, and when the code seems crazy and hard to explain, a lot of the times what I would do is just create a uniform and have it placed in a piece of the code and see when I adjust it to see what it does. And then I'm like, okay, this part of the code, the math is doing this and affecting highlight or affecting position. And that kind of helps you see visually what you're doing, which is just about what I did for this. This was just a set number. And what I did is I created a variable that I can adjust in Flame and visually see what I'm doing.
It's great, and the process that you showed is so true to scripting, at least from what I can tell. Not that I'm a scripter, but when I was making a Python
Right,
script, my process was to like change the code, save it, try it in
right,
Flame. What happened? Look at
right,
the terminal. Oh, it didn't work.
right.
Okay, go back to the code, change something, save it, go back to Flame. So it's cool to see that same process, but in a different little like world, I guess.
Definitely, definitely. Well, I'm actually kind of glad of the happy mistakes that happen with it because it's the least realistic thing for me to build a script and then have it run perfectly out of just writing it. I typically make silly mistakes, and then it takes me a while to find out what I'm doing wrong, and then I'm like, oh yeah, duh.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Maury who said it earlier, and he was
Thank
saying that
you.
you're very brave for coding live in front of an audience. That's not for the faint of heart, and you
Oh
did it.
god.
You're done. It's behind you now. You did it.
Ah,
Awesome,
yes,
awesome
yes.
job. Everyone's very proud of the
Thank you.
presentation
Thank
you
you.
did. They think it's great. Awesome work. Thanks so much,
Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you so much.
If anyone has any more questions and is part of the patrons chat, we can see Grazie over there. But for now, I'm gonna finish up the show here. But thanks so much, Grazie, and I'll see you over on the patrons chat.
Awesome. See you then.
Okay, what a great presentation. For now, I think I have some prizes to give away. It's prize time from the people who have signed up for Logik. Oh boy, that is not. Who's using Chrome? Let me close that window. I think it's messing something up. Oh, there we go. And we're back. We're back. Okay. Window's a little bit. There we go. Okay, we are a live show, everybody. Just wanted to remind you all just how live we are. We have a wonderful list of names, and I am going to spin the list of names, and we're going to see who wins. The first on our agenda here is a Logik beanie, because here in New York City it is awfully chilly today at 39 degrees. So let's see who's going to walk away with the beanie. And it is none other than David Kreitz, who's walking away with a fantastic beanie. David Kreitz. Let's see who's walking away with our next prize. Our next prize, I have determined, will be a Logik mug. So you can put your lovely beverage, warm beverage, into a lovely mug. And the winner is Virgil Kastrup. Congratulations. Virgil, you're walking away with the Logik mug. And the last but not least prize we're going to be giving away is a license for Optics. Optics. We all know and love Optics. And the winner of Optics is David Marin. Congratulations to David Marin. You have won some Optics. We did it. Wonderful. Thank you for participating in prize time. Congratulations to all the winners. I'm going to switch back to our slideshow, and we're going to talk about a few more announcements and shout-outs. Coming up on Logik Live, as soon as it will not be a black frame. Oh, here we go. Coming up, Andy is back in the hot seat when he's not flying on a plane, speaking with Cristobal Valenzuela, the CEO of Runway. He's going to talk about the latest and greatest with his machine learning platform that has swept through the Flame community. I'm still absolutely looking forward to checking this episode out. Very cool program. And then a week after that, Amanda Elliott is back hosting Logik Live, interviewing and talking with Britt Ciampa, who I had the pleasure of meeting not too long ago. And that is what is coming up on Logik Live. If you haven't already signed up with the forum, please head on over to do so. I think someone was asking about it. If you're still here, this is our forum, forum.logik.tv. Daily conversations, question answering, just general great stuff related to Flame. While you're there, why don't you also sign up and head on over to the Logik Discord, where we're having some of our more informal chats and hangouts. Great place to be. This episode of Logik Live will be available on the website later on today. If you haven't already, you can check out the latest podcast, number 30, talking to Inti Martinez. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher. We have reached 1,600 subscribers on YouTube, specifically 1.65 thousand, and it just keeps growing. That's the goal. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and the like button. It does help. If you'd like to support what we're doing here on Logik, please become a patron by signing up at patreon.com/LogikTV. Be sure to check out the Logik merch store and swag yourself out. Some of our lucky viewers today walked away with some sweet swag. If you aren't so lucky and you want to have some swag, take a look at the merch store. Big thank you to Boris Effects for sponsoring Logik Live. If you'd like to save 15% on everything they make, you can use the code Logik-2022 discount code at checkout. Now that I'm saying that out loud, though, I see that we probably need a new Logik code, but for now, that is our Logik code. Thank you to AJA for also sponsoring Logik Live. They've been together with Flame since 2006. And a final thank you to Hotspring, the newest sponsor of Logik Live. They are the future of VFX outsourcing, connecting you to other artists from around the world to help you get your projects done. You can find them at thehotspring.com. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Grazie, for coming and taking the time to talk about demystifying Matchbox shaders. I'm going to cue the music.
Definitely.
We're going to head on over to the patron chat and continue the conversation with a little Q&A, dig a little bit deeper to what we talked about here. I know there's one pretty deep question that hopefully we can answer, but other than that, I'll see you patrons there, and thank you all for being here on the first episode of 2023. We'll see you next time on Logik Live. Thank you all.